My name is Glenn Shumate, and I'm part of an effort with a Student Workforce Advancement Group to provide some career pathway information to students from CMSD. And we're pleased to have you join us today for a presentation with Great Lakes Construction. The participant from Great Lakes who will kind of be hosting us today is Jackie Jacob. She is an assistant project manager with Great Lakes. I know that she went to Youngstown State in engineering and has worked on several major projects here in Northeastern Ohio, and glad that she's able to join us and have one of her colleagues with us, Lisa Fairweather, as well, join us today to talk a little bit about Great Lakes construction and the construction industry, and to try to share a perspective that hopefully will be of interest to the students. And so students, if you have any questions, you can chat. Later in the actual program, we will open it up. If you want to, voice and verbalize those questions or ask questions, you can feel free. There are features, again, on your screen that allow you to chat. There's a feature at the bottom where you can chat to everyone or to an individual. I will, I guess you don't necessarily have to share video faces if you're going to be on the PowerPoint, Jackie and Lisa. So thank you for joining us, and we'll get started.
All right. Hello to everyone out there. So as Glenn said, I'm Jackie Jacob. I work for Great Lakes Construction on the project management side. And I'm going to go over some information about Great Lakes. Let's see if I can pull the PowerPoint up right. Share. Okay. All right. So while I do the PowerPoint, I'm going to shut my camera off, as Glenn said, just to make things easy.
Jackie, one thing before you shut your PowerPoint off,
Sure.
what's the background in back of you?
Oh, my background.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's well, I just hold on, let's see how I can get back. That is more, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to return back on. That is the Innerbelt Bridge. So I was on the Innerbelt Bridge project a couple of years back. And that was for that project specifically. We took the, see if I can make this clear, actually blowing it up and then rebuilding a sister bridge next to the CCG1 is what we called it, but the first portion of the bridge that was built. So behind me, it's a photo virtual background of us building the piers for the new bridge. So it's just
And so what's a pier, Jackie?
All right, so a pier, so the way a bridge works is you have piers, which are like this right here, and it supports the bridge. And how it does that is there's a foundation or a footer underneath the ground that has what we call H piles that go about, for this bridge, they went almost 200 feet down into the ground. So you don't see any of that. And then you have the concrete for the foundation, which is all underneath this. And then we build the pier on top of that, which supports the bridge. So you can see this is the first portion, trying to make sure my hand doesn't disappear. And it supports, you can see this is the bridge deck, and the pier supports the bridge deck. So that's really, it's made up of concrete, steel, and that's mainly it. And that's the type of work we do one of the types of work we do from a heavy civil contractor standpoint. You're welcome. Okay, so let's see, I'm gonna try to turn this off again. Okay, so I'll get started with our PowerPoint. So as I mentioned, we are Great Lakes Construction. This photo is one of our many projects here in Cleveland. It's the Metro Health Hospital project that they're building a new hospital, but just so you get an idea of one of the types of work we do. Sorry, I'm trying to, change the slide. So some work types so Great Lakes Construction has been in business over 70 years. We are an ESOP company, which means we have every employee has stock in the company. So I'm considered an owner. Lisa is considered an owner. And all of our employees are considered owners because we all have stock, which is different than, say, a family-owned company where, it's family-owned, so only certain people own the company. We have employees in our office, so I'll call them non-bargaining employees because they're not union, or just our office workers if so project managers, superintendents, when they come into the office, our estimators, our survey guys, and then we also have our union personnel. So we have our laborers, our operators, carpenters. So those are the guys that actually do the physical work on the projects, which I'll get into a little explanation of that later. Some of the work types that we do. So we do bridge work, which you obviously saw the picture of the Interbelt Bridge. We also do earthwork, roadways, wastewater treatment plants, oil and gas pads, energy, shoring, piling, and concrete paving. So to give you some real quick examples, if you look at these pictures around the jobs, because I'm sure a lot of you don't know what all of these different things mean. The first picture in the upper left-hand corner is earthwork, us pushing dirt around the job site. Then you have a bridge right next to it. And at the bottom, from left to right, we have some concrete paving, some shoring and piling, which is steel in the ground, some roadway work, then some oil and gas foundation pads for oil and gas, energy, a wind turbine, which some of you have seen those along over by Euclid. I know they have one up that we did, and then a wastewater treatment plant. So those are just some types of projects that we do. And on every project, we also have subcontractors. So Great Lakes only is part of certain unions, and subcontractors such as the electrical, structural steel, which frames a bridge or frames a building, like that kind of stuff we don't do. So we have to subcontract that out to other people. So then next page. Okay, some might wonder what kind of opportunities does this for me? At the end of the presentation, I'll ask a little bit about that. But I never thought I would get into construction or engineering. I didn't have someone in my family that did it. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I wish I did sooner because there's a lot of opportunities. So on this slide, I listed some of them. So these are all just people that work in our office that support our guys in the field. So the guys in the field, the superintendents, the guys that are the union workers that physically put the work in place. A lot of people, including myself, feel they're the most important people on in our company because they're the ones that physically get the jobs done. In my opinion, I'm supposed to support them. So some of the opportunities with the people in the office is we have co-ops and interns. So if you're in college and you want to check out construction or engineering, see what it's about, we have a pretty great internship program. So throughout the summer, or if you have spring or fall, you can come work on one of our jobs if you get hired. And the co-op and interns get a good firsthand experience of what it's like working on a project with us. So you can decide if it's what you like, if it's what you don't like, but you get some really good background experience doing that, working with our project engineers and superintendents in the field. So then we have our project engineers. They do a lot of our daily reports, our timesheets, quantity tracking, weekly cost monitoring. So they're very ingrained in the project details. Our superintendents who run the projects, they're kind of like the top tier guy out on the job. Project managers like myself, we keep all the documentation, the contracts, the suppliers, purchase orders, a lot more of the documentation side. If there's an issue on the project, we deal directly with the owners. So we talk about the money. We're getting we invoice the owners, and we deal with paying invoices for our subs as well. The estimators are the ones that get the work the majority of the time. So they're looking at what it's going to cost for us to get a job. And then they're putting estimates together to submit to an owner. So they do a lot of takeoffs to try to figure out how much work there is and what it's going to cost. We have an engineering department, which we do not physically design drawings as some people do, but we do, for example, shoring design. So instead of doing big project design, we do little stuff. Then our survey department, they go out and make sure we're installing things in the right locations. Our human resources, such as Lisa, she handles any issues within the company, but also all of our hiring. She supports our operations team with our interns and our co-ops, and I'm sure many other things that I don't know a lot about. Our accounts payable and payroll ladies, they do a great job. They make sure all of our suppliers are paid, and our timekeepers, just making sure all of our workers are getting paid for the hours that they work. Safety coordinators, making sure all of our projects are safe, because we are safety is one of our top priorities on our projects. Mechanics make sure our equipment is working. Our warehouse, they make sure all of our projects get stocked with all the materials and equipment that they need. We do not have a diversity coordinator, but we have had them on other projects. So if you're interested in dealing with the community or dealing with just ensuring diverse workforce on projects or diverse businesses within the projects, that's is a very important aspect. Public information, again, not something we directly have, but we have had on certain projects where to make sure that the community understands what's going on projects. We have our operations managers, our vice presidents, president, controller, and then our chief financial officer. So not all of these, the main reason I listed all of this out is to point out that not everything is construction, not everything is engineering. There's a lot of these positions deal with people, deal with safety, deal with equipment, deal with just the public in general. So if you don't just think construction, there's a lot more opportunities tied to that. So that I would consider that our white collar inner office group. Then we have our union workforce. So our blue collar guys that are out in the field physically doing all the work. We couldn't survive without these guys. So some good things about the unions and the workforce in the unions that some people might not know about or think about is it's a lifetime career. So a lot of people that join it stay in it for a long period of time. They're the ones that physically put all the work in place. And while in the union, they get a lot of classroom training, but they also get trained as you do the work. There's a really decent pay scale depending on which position you have. I listed an example of the laborer's journeyman, which means you're not an apprentice anymore. You're a full-time journeyman, and they get paid $34.28 an hour, plus benefits, plus overtime. There's a lot of overtime on the projects. So when you think about, where you want to be, college is not always, the direction for everybody. And this is a great career to make a great living. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. What a plus side of working for a union instead of working for a non-union company is there's union agreements. So the union put together agreements that the contractors have to sign off on, and it really just defends the union workers' rights and what they get. a safe work environment. A lot of unions and companies have to have, OSHA 30, which just means you're trained in a lot of safety procedures. It's a team atmosphere. Everybody, it's just like basketball. If you have 5 players and one guy isn't doing what they're supposed to do, the team suffers. So everybody wants to work together. I'll go over it later on, what to expect from a union workforce standpoint. And then just the requirements, all you need is to have a high school diploma or GED, a driver's license with some sort of transportation, and drug-free, because a lot of the companies, including ours, are drug-free workplace, so you have to be able to pass a drug test. So I know I've kind of given a lot of information. I feel like this is the fun part. I'm going to show different slides showing the different examples of the different unions, because some people might not understand what laborer and operator means. So I'll move on to that. So laborers, these are the guys that do them, I would say, some of the most physical work, but they do a lot of different work. So, and they're the ones that are jackhammering out the concrete. They're installing pipe. In the one picture in the bottom left-hand corner, they're bolting together a 15-foot diameter storage tank on a project, so that they're physically bolting these things together. They're installing pavement mesh. They're placing stone. They're doing a lot of the more, labor-intensive work, but they do a great job at it. The operators, if I had to pick a trade to get into, I think I would pick the operators. It's a very skilled job. Out of all the unions, I would say this one takes the most, training, because you have to run equipment, and there's a safety aspect to that. So you want to make sure that you know what you're doing so no one gets hurt. But here's some examples of the different pieces of equipment that we have. We have a lot more, but these are just some examples. And the guys in the machines are who the operators are. They run the heavy equipment. In the upper left-hand corner, those are excavators. Below that, more excavators, a dozer, and loaders, and a couple different types. So, excuse me. So that's just some examples, but the operators, it seems like a pretty good union as well. It takes a lot of I always thought that it's kind of like a video game, when you run all the different controls and the equipment. So so that's the operators. Then we have the carpenters. So these guys, from Great Lakes is a heavy civil contractor, but there's also contractors out there that do more vertical construction, like hospitals or buildings. And the carpenters union, from a heavy civil standpoint, is different than the carpenters union from the building trade. So these pictures are for heavy civil carpenters. Their main responsibility is forming up concrete. So when I talked about those piers, you saw they were a couple 100 feet tall on the Inner Bridge. We had people building these forms, which you can see in 3 of the 4 pictures, all the way up. And this is how they did it. They did it off man baskets. They did it climbing on the side. They're tied off for safety precautions, obviously, but they build these, and then you pour the concrete within them. So you're essentially building a box to pour concrete in. And that's what the carpenters do. They work with laborers to pour concrete as well.
So when you say tied off, Jackie, what's that mean?
Yeah, so so in a couple different ways, mainly when you tie off to something, you're wearing a harness around your body, and then you have a lanyard that is clipped to something stable, so that if you were to fall, it would catch you. In this lower left-hand corner, and it's hard to see unless you zoom in, he has a harness on, and he has a clip, like a hook, that hooks himself to the forms, because the forms are they're anchored down, so it'll hold him to make sure that if he were to slip, he wouldn't fall. It's a safety precaution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the difference between the heavy civil carpenters and the building contractor carpenters is, from a building standpoint, they do a lot more of the interior, like interior kind of carpentry. So when you think of a house, the drywall, the framing, different for the doors, different interior type work. So it's very different, as you can see. It's not hanging off the side of a bridge, forming concrete. It's, drywall, putting in doors, putting in windows, stuff like that. Okay, and then you have the cement masons. So they come behind the carpenters, and I like to say they make the concrete pretty. They smooth it out if there's bumps, if it needs a pattern. If you ever look at your sidewalks or your driveways, and there's kind of like a little loops all around it or circles, the cement masons specialize in that. Or for like on the side for the pavement anyways. And then for the side of the bridges, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner, when they take the panels off that you saw in the last slide, they leave marks. So you can see the marks from where the panels were, and then the cement masons will come in and they'll rub marks out. So they'll fill any of the holes from anchors, and they'll rub with different materials the lines out. So over time they'll fade. So they kind of make it look a little more presentable to anybody not working on the project. Then we have pile drivers, who the pile drivers actually fall under the carpenters union, but they do very different work. So when I mentioned H piles for the bridge before, in the upper right-hand corner, the orange steel beams, those are H piles. So for the bridge, imagine these being about 200 foot in the ground. That's what these guys do. We had a lot of pile drivers on that project. They bring out a hammer, a piled hammer. That's really what they call it. And they either will hammer or vibrate these into the ground. So that's the largest portion of what they do. But they also drill. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the circular pipe, and they have a drill is on that piece of machinery. So they're drilling holes, and they're sticking in these pictures. They're drilling holes, and they're putting these H piles into the hole. So it's a little, I would say this is one of the more dangerous unions, but it's also very challenging. And the guys that do it love it. Because you get to deal with a lot of really big equipment, a lot of really big materials, and it just makes it a little more challenging. A lot of people like that, and you do get paid a little more in this union versus other unions, but just that's important to you. It's something to consider. Contractors. So those are all the unions that Great Lakes is signatory to, which means that Great Lakes employs. We also employ subcontractors that work with other unions. So electricians, excuse me, landscapers, iron workers who install rebar, or mesh, which is up in the upper right-hand corner, or structural steel, which is in the lower right-hand corner. And that's a picture of the future Metro Hospital project going up. So they are not our subcontractor, but they are a subcontractor, and that's what they do. And if we were going to do work for that portion, we would hire someone for that. Okay, so I guess one thing that is my favorite, I'm going to ask the question to the group here in a minute. People ask me, what do I like most about my job? What do I like most about construction? And the two things I always say is it's never boring. That's one of them. So you can see this is a picture of the Vanderbilt Bridge that I was talking about when we blew it up. I actually have it framed at my house. It was so cool to be able to see that in person, and not a lot of people get to do that. So it was very exciting to witness that. And then also it's always changing. You might have a day or two the same, but over a long period of time, you're constantly doing different types of work because projects change over time. So you're never spending weeks and months doing the exact same thing. Things always change. So whereas some people spend years doing the exact same thing, I don't have to do that. So that's something that I find interesting about it. So that opens it up to questions. Let's see how I can stop. How do I do this? Oops. Glenn, do you know how pause share. There we go. Okay, so that opens it up to questions. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions here.
Sure.
And Gregory, want to encourage you though to, if you have a question or comment, to ask or share, because it's really, these presentations are for the students to ask questions, to learn, to become more familiar. So certainly want to hear from you, either verbally or through the chat function. You can. But my question, I guess, for you, Jackie, is how did you get started in construction? What made you interested in construction, or what made you want to be an engineer?
Okay. So so when I first started college, I was actually majoring in graphic design. So I didn't know anything about construction. I had wanted to do architecture, which is it's kind of like the design of how buildings look or landscaping looks. But I never got into that. And when I changed my major from graphic design, I took some just entry-level engineering architecture classes and decided civil engineering. I didn't know anything about it, but in the class, it was the most interesting to me. So I started taking more classes about them, and everything I learned about civil engineering, which there are different kinds of engineering. There's civil, mechanical, electrical, biochemical. There's a lot of different kinds. Civil was the most interesting to me because it affects a lot of people. It's all transportation. It's, treatment of water. It's airports. It's roadways. It's drainage. There's so much different stuff that affects people every day. And it hasn't been boring since I started. And since I didn't know anything about it, it made it that much more interesting when I started learning. So, yeah, I think my uncle's in construction, but that's it. And yeah, it hasn't been boring since. So I would say don't be discouraged if you don't know anything about it. I would say that is one of the reasons I like it so much.
So for you, what do you do every day? I mean, I know you said it's never boring. What's a day in the life of a project engineer?
A project engineer or project manager?
Project manager.
Okay. So for a project manager, all of our project managers have multiple projects. So right now I have 4 different projects going on. So each one are different. And for each one, I do, I do some of the typical paperwork. So like invoicing, submittals, extra work, costs, and dealing with the owners. But I do a lot of planning, cost projections. I go out to the projects, so I get to see the project being built from start to finish. I hold planning meetings with our teams and progress meetings with the owners. I do schedule updates. So it's a little more technical on the technical side than more hands-on that the superintendents and the project engineers do. But I like it, and I like keeping track of a lot of different things. So that works well with being a project manager, having a couple different projects going on at the same time.
Lisa, what HR do? What do you do in HR? How's an HR manager spend their day?
So we've got quite a bit going on, and it's interesting because it's almost like I'm a one-man show here. So it's the recruiting aspect of it. So talent management, it's also employee relations, it's implementing policies and procedures and making sure that we work with the managers to be able to move forward with things such as the COVID-19 and working alongside safety to make sure that, you know, we're following the guidelines from the CDC, but also, you know, we're not violating any other laws such as FMLA and, you know, the ADA and things like that. So my day, much like Jackie's, is very different every day. There's always something going on. It's always very exciting. I'd like to reiterate something that Jackie had said, and that was how essential the trades are to construction. And so when we think about like talent management, we think about, you know, bringing in the salaried side, the white collar. It's a little bit easier because you can, you know, go online and you can post on, you know, ZipRecruiters and Indeed and things like that. And you can go through headhunters. But when it comes to filling positions such as the trades, it's a little bit more difficult because we have a lot of positions that we need to fill, and there's just not a lot of people out there who think about trades as a career. And I think that that's something that we have to do a better job at educating. So I answered your question and then went on. So
Sure. No, that's good. So how did you get into construction, or how did you get in HR?
So I have been in HR for quite some time. I've just been with Great Lakes for just about 4 months. I worked at, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Charter Steel in Cleveland. And then I went and worked at the corporate office for 16 years. My father got sick, so I came back and I got the opportunity to work at Great Lakes. And it was something I was really excited about. My father was a retired millwright. And so it was just really interesting to me, and that's kind of how I landed here.
Okay, well, that's good.
Hey, Glenn, could I add something?
Sure, absolutely.
So just from a, you know, I went over what myself as a project manager does. I've been with Great Lakes for over 9 years now, and just something students might find interesting at when you start out. So as an entry level position, we call those project engineers. When you're not in college anymore, you're not doing an internship or a co-op, typically you start off as a project engineer. And what a project engineer does would be, they're actually out on a project. They get sent to a specific project most of the time. And they do a lot of different things, whether they're doing, I mean, they do the daily reports, they take the photos, they do the timesheets for all of our workforce. They do all of our coding. So we have a lot of reference numbers based on the activities. They measure all the quantities on the job, whether they're placing stone or ordering concrete. They personally place the orders, so they might run the concrete pour. If they're they've been in it for a little while, they might manage the stone placement. They work with the project manager on releasing materials and shop drawings. They work with the superintendents to help run the work. They help work with the superintendents to plan the work. So they really get a lot of firsthand experience in the industry on the projects with construction as a project engineer. And a lot of our project engineers do that for, you know, a couple of years. I would say probably 4 or 5 at the most. And then they slowly transition to something else they want to do, whether it's a superintendent where they're running their own work, in which case they might have already been an assistant superintendent, a project manager, assistant project manager, they could decide they want to go and do estimating. So then they go that route. So there's a lot of opportunities from that place, but that's a lot of our people start from there so that they get the basis of understanding for the work we do. And even our president was once a co-op at the company. A lot of our vice presidents were, and a lot of different people at our company started off as co-ops and interns, which I always find an interesting statistic.
Okay. So two questions that also came up from students, and the one interest is the person that a lot of feedback. A person that deals with the structure of a building, and in particular the design of a building. And so as we talk about careers in construction, that would relate to structural integrity, design, what feedback or suggestions might you have for a student who has that kind of interest?
Okay, well, I would say structural design, if they're really interested in structural design, which would be the structure of a building or structure of a bridge, they might want to check out an internship with a design firm. So in the area, there's HNTB, there's GPD, there's a couple different companies that's what they do. They design, they do all of the backup calculations for structural items on projects, buildings. I would say it'd be great to do an internship for them, because some people think that's what they want to do and don't realize it's a lot of office work. So they spend a lot, unless they like that, that's great. They spend a lot of time, doing those calculations. So that's what the designers specifically do. So whereas we have engineers in our company that do some structural, but not building structural. So that would be a design firm that they would want to reach out to.
Okay. All right. Well, if there are no other questions that anyone has, or any other comments from presenters, we can conclude this session. But I do want to say thank you very much for Lisa and Jackie from Great Lakes for sharing your expertise, your insights, and taking the time to explain to us a little bit more about construction on Great Lakes and career opportunities. And we hope that we can have you on a session in the future. And again, I want to say thank you, and to the students participate. Appreciate your being here, and feel free